Audio, can you hear audio? Everything good? I think you're good to go. All right, everybody. Let's.
The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Sunday, March 1st. I hope everybody is having a good weekend. I apologize. The adventures of tech while traveling. The adventures continue and they seem endless, and it keeps going on. Anyway, we're live now, and you are here. Hopefully, everybody was on the original stream. Will join the stream soon. There were a lot more people originally, but they will come. They will come. They will discover the stream. But yes, thank you all for joining me, and thank you for having patience with my travails with regard to this. All right, we are on day 2 of the war with Iran. I want to give you an update today on what happened during the day in the war itself, what were the targets, success, and I want to talk about the major risks that now the war represents, the major risks for its successful completion, and the only real significant damage I think that the Iranians can do. We'll talk about what that damage is and where it's going to happen, what to watch to see if it happens. But let's start with kind of the day and how it went. I mean, we'll start with the Israeli and American attacks on Iran, which have basically been nonstop since yesterday morning, throughout the night and throughout today. Airplanes have been flying to Iran, bombing, coming back, refueling, taking off, and there's been a corridor of planes going from Israel to Iran, and I assume from the various military bases as well as from the aircraft carriers from the United States. The Israelis have primarily been targeting regime headquarters, so things like the Islamic Revolutionary Guard headquarters has been flattened. It does not exist anymore. It has been completely and utterly destroyed. That was in Tehran. But generally, what is being targeted are being primarily kind of internal security forces within Iran. So what's being targeted is Iranian internal security apparatus, taking out all the different internal forces that would suppress the Iranian people if they rose up against the regime. So these are the people who went out to the streets and killed the demonstrators. These are the forces that the Iranian regime counts on to protect its existence, to protect itself. And Israel has been systematically all over Tehran, but I think in other cities as well, around Iran, systematically killing and destroying their headquarters, their bases, killing as many operatives as possible. And the strategy here is clear. I mean, it is now clear that the goal of this operation is regime change. I think Trump has made that clear. The Israelis have made that clear. We'll get to Trump later, but so far made that clear. The goal is regime change, and in order to secure regime change, what has to happen is you have to be able to secure the people, the opposition within Iran's ability to take over regime facilities without getting killed and without getting massacred. Israel is trying to make that possible. Trying to soften the regime's capabilities of defending itself against people on the ground. At the end of the day, regime change happens on the ground. It does not happen in the air. regime change does not happen, through an Air Force. Somebody on the ground is going to have to engage in the regime change. And I think both the Israelis and Americans are hoping that the Iranian people will do that, combined with potentially, hopefully, elements within the Iranian military that will join them and overthrow. But to help secure that and to help make that as safe as possible and to help make that as likely as possible, the Israelis are basically clearing out the internal security apparatus. They're killing as many as they can within that apparatus to make it as ineffective as possible. I think this is the right strategy. It makes complete sense. Now, this could only happen after Israeli Air Force and the American Air Force have basically secured complete and utter air superiority over Iran, at least over central and western Iran. I don't think they've ventured too far east. That means they've taken out all the air defense systems, or at least all the major air defense systems. There's still, I'm sure, random air defense systems and shoulder-held anti-aircraft missiles that the Iranians might have. But all the radars, all the big stuff, the dangerous stuff, they've taken out, and now planes, stealth and otherwise, can operate fairly freely above in Iranian airspace, and that's exactly what is happening. There are planes zooming around Tehran and going after whatever basic targets they want. Iranians have no capabilities, no capacity to stop Israel and the United States from shooting at anything they want to shoot at. So that is without question a major achievement of day two, and it continues in a sense that what is happening here? 1 second. Let me just get this up and going. Sorry. Okay. All right, we missed out on that. That's fine. These operations continue, and again, a major achievement of day two, a complete operation control in the skies of western and central Iran. The United States has also been busy. It has taken out a significant number of Iranian ships. Supposedly 7 ships of the Iranian Navy have been sunk or been attacked. It's not clear, how many ships to go. I should have probably done the research before this, but I don't know how many ships the Iranians have and how many ships would have to be taken out still. One of the goals of the American military is basically to destroy the navy of the Iranians, make it impossible for them to mine the Hormuz Strait, and make it impossible for them to pester ships. Now, they can still launch missiles at those ships from the land, but to take away their navy capabilities. The Iranian Navy is not huge, and it is not particularly powerful. The Americans should have an easy time at taking them out. It's a little surprising to me that the attacks on the Navy have not been more robust and not been more focused and not more serious. The Iranian Navy, by this point in day two, should be at the bottom of the Oman Sea or at the Gulf or whatever. They should be basically completely destroyed. They have no capabilities to defend themselves against the United States, against the Air Force. I understand that the U.S., for the first time ever in military operations, the U.S. is using what are called suicide drones. These are one-way drones. Really, I think the Iranians actually invented these kind of drones, and they've become super useful for the Russians fighting the Ukrainians. These are drones that basically hold explosives in them, and the whole idea is they crash into the target and explode. So they're one-way drones. That's why they're called suicide drones, kamikaze drones. They don't come back. And the United States has now these drones have been operationalized. The American drones are based on copies, I believe, more advanced and more sophisticated, but based on the Iranian Shahad drone that the Russians are using and the Iranians are now using against various targets in the Middle East. The drones are, the American drones are operational. Supposedly, some of the Navy ships, the Iranian Navy ships that were attacked by these suicide drones. There was a story, I think I mentioned it yesterday, about the U.S. and Israeli not accidentally, basically shooting at a school where there were large numbers of casualties of school children. A real tragedy and a horrific event. Well, it turned out today, interesting enough, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard admitted this, that it wasn't the Israelis, it wasn't the Americans, it was actually a misfired ballistic missile dropped on the school. And I think something like 100 kids were killed. So it turned out that this was not an intelligence error. It was not a mistake on the part of the Americans or the Israelis. This was an error, whatever you want to call it, by the Iranians. All right. Iran has been, of course, continuing to launch the ballistic missiles and using these suicide drones. They've been launching missiles at Israel in small numbers per round. And it is a little disappointing and a little bewildering that the Israeli air defense system is not managing to knock down all of them. They're knocking down a vast majority, 90+% of them. But given that they're not overloaded with huge numbers of drones, it's surprising some of them are getting by them. And maybe some of these are what are called hypersonic, and they're very difficult to shoot down. Anyway, one of them last night hit a home in an Israeli town called Beit Shemesh. It hit the air raid shelter. It hit where the people were hiding, and it caused significant damage. These ballistic missiles are big. They have vast explosives, and quite a few people were killed. So we've got significant casualties. I think last I saw 8 killed and quite a few injured. And there might be quite a few people that are still missing. So the casualty list is likely to increase over time. At the same time, the Iranians continue to bomb Bahrain. I saw a high-rise building in Bahrain in flames. They continue to bomb Dubai, including the luxury hotel in Dubai, the famous luxury hotel's name I can't pronounce, but that was on fire. Kuwait, Oman, which was the moderator in the negotiations. Qatar, which is supposedly Iran's ally. Saudi Arabia, again, more. And of course, Iraq and Jordan, and they're attacking everybody. As part of this, 2 missiles were even targeted at Cyprus. Cyprus is even further west than Israel. And Britain has significant forces in Cyprus. Cyprus holds a couple of British bases. And as a consequence, Britain is now motivated and to get involved. The Iranians also attacked a naval compound of the French. The French got attacked, and they're of course running for their lives. No, I'm kidding. But the French got attacked. They had a naval base in the Gulf, and in the Persian Gulf, and France is now deploying an aircraft carrier. It's one of the few countries in the world that has an aircraft carrier. It's deploying an aircraft carrier with its entourage, with the other ships, from the Baltic Sea to the Eastern Mediterranean. Now, of course, that's a long way, and it's going to take a while until it gets there. So by the time the French enter the war will probably be over. Typical French, if you ask me. But it is interesting that the Iranians have managed to antagonize even the European Union. Even the European Union now is coming out against Iran. So go figure. The Saudis have basically said they will participate in the fight. Trump, I think, earlier today said that he expects the Saudis to fight side by side with the Americans against Iran. So you might see the Saudi Air Force engaged in some kind of activity. They have a pretty advanced Air Force. They have American jets. They don't have F-35s, but they have F-16s, F-15s. You are also seeing, of course, Jordan participate in at least knocking down the drones that are heading towards Israel. I'm trying to think what else. Somebody's asking if I think it's a real war. I don't know what you mean by that. If you want to ask a question, use the super chat. But yeah, bombs are falling. Do I think it's a real war? Are people dying? Stuff getting blown up? Absolutely. And if you want to question what a real war is, I would ask you how many wars you participated in. My guess is I have more than you. So I've seen real wars, been in real wars. This is a real war. So you're seeing the UAW, the Dubai, basically, the United Arab Emirates, which includes Dubai. The United Arab Emirates has actually cut off diplomatic relationships with Iran. Supposedly, Iran has fired 150 plus ballistic missiles towards the United Arab Emirates. Now, the United Arab Emirates has a pretty robust air defense system, supposedly second only to that of Israel in the Middle East. So it has knocked down, I think I saw the statistics, something like 93% of all the ballistic missiles heading towards it, but some have gotten through and done damage. In the attacks on American bases in the Middle East, not clear exactly which ones, maybe in Kuwait, maybe in Bahrain, probably in Bahrain in the naval headquarters. The first American casualties have been announced. 3 Americans were killed. I think 5 were injured. In one of these attacks, they have not specified where exactly. Ballistic missiles were also fired towards the American aircraft carrier that is in the Gulf of Oman. But supposedly all the ballistic missiles were shot down and the aircraft carrier suffered no damage. Iran is sending many drones towards the American fleet, but the drones, relatively speaking, are much easier to shoot down. They're slower. They don't go into the above the atmosphere. So they're much easier to shoot down and to destroy. Again, no damage done. No damage done. Ballistic missiles have been shot towards this evening towards Jerusalem, the West Bank, where Palestinians live. And indeed, some of the damage that you can see. I mean, these ballistic missiles first are very big. They have huge explosive power. So if they land, they do a lot of damage. But one of the things that can happen is when they're intercepted, they break apart, right? They break apart in the sky. And the fragments are incredibly dangerous, and they can be fairly big. And indeed, this evening, a fragment of a missile that had been shot down landed on a car, on a van, and 7 people were injured, 1 critical in that car. So there's a lot of ways in which these missiles being sent towards Israel can do damage. But overall, the damage in Israel is minimal. And in particular, if you compare it to the damage that is being inflicted on the regime, on regime institutions, on regime players in Iran itself. Now, there are all kinds of rumors, and I'm just going to tell you these things, but I'm going to tell you that there's a good probability this is not true. But maybe in the next few hours this will be confirmed and it will be true. But there are reports that I just don't know if this is true or not. There are reports that Khamenei's son, Mujtaba, who was supposed to be the heir apparent to Khamenei, was actually killed in the airstrike that killed his father. Now, again, that would be huge, given that he was the expected successor. The Iranians have announced that they will appoint a successor within days to Khamenei. Well, that might be difficult. In the meantime, the Iranians have created a council, including 3 people. Let me just see. I thought I had the. Yeah, they created a council of 3 people to run the country without a supreme leader. and that includes the head of the judiciary. It includes the head of one of the main councils, and it includes a cleric by the name of Ayatollah Arafat. Ayatollah Arafat might be the guy to succeed Khamenei. Again, there are stories in the Israeli media, unconfirmed, but stories in the Israeli media that he is now being killed, not in the same attack as yesterday, but in a new attack. He has been killed. So now you've got two major ayatollahs gone. I assume this is going to be the pattern Israel is going to try to follow, and that is the same what they did with Hezbollah, where they keep appointing new people to head up Hezbollah, and they keep killing them. And the idea here is to make it a very, very short-lived job and a very, very dangerous job to become the supreme leader of Iran. Israel, as soon as an announcement is made, they will be killed. Hopefully that is true, and hopefully that will continue. I think it's a major, it will be a major hit on the Iranians if Israel can continue to do that. Let's see, what else do I want to add? Yeah, this is amazing sci-fi type stuff, but true and verified now. It turns out that Channel 3, IRIB, which is the state TV of the Islamic regime in Iran, was broadcasting regular programming, I mean special emergency programming, I guess, but it was hacked. And for a period of time, it was broadcasting messages from Netanyahu and from Donald Trump to the Iranian nation. Netanyahu explicitly calling on people to overthrow the regime on Iranian television, on state Islamic regime television. I mean, you gotta say that's a beautiful thing. So that happened today as well, in addition to everything else. Let's see, what else do I want to, let's see if I've covered other stuff. I want to get to Trump in a minute. Yeah, as I said, the headquarters of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard has been destroyed completely. Yeah, 2,000 targets have already, well over 2,000 targets have already been targeted, already been hit over the last couple of days. I mean, that is about half of what Israel did in 12 days in June, right? So in 2 days, they've done what they did before. In 12 days, I mean, given that the Americans are helping. I don't remember if I mentioned it yesterday, but B-2s actually participated in the bombing on the first day. They flew all the way from Missouri. The UK banned them from flying out of UK. They banned them from flying out of Diego Garcia, which is under UK control. So they had to fly from Missouri. They flew from Missouri all the way to Iran, refueling on the way. And they dropped 2,000-pound bombs on ballistic missiles that were in deep bunkers that Israeli munitions would have a hard time reaching. So the B-2 is in play and is participating in bombing runs over Iran. We will see how often they use the B-2s. My expectation is they will use them some more on strategic assets. They haven't really, as far as we know, we don't really know, but as far as we know, they haven't really targeted some of the nuclear sites. They will probably use the B-2s to finish off some of those. According to these numbers, 5 countries have shot down 1,400 Iranian missiles and drones. 1,400. The UAE has shot down 165 missiles, 2 ballistic missiles, 2 cruise missiles, and 541 drones. They have suffered 3 casualties. Kuwait has shot down 97 ballistic missiles and 283 drones and has 1 casualty. Qatar has shot down 60 ballistic missiles, 12 drones. Now, when I say Qatar shot down, Kuwait shot down, Americans in those countries shot down the ballistic missiles. This is not local air defense systems. This is American air defense systems. Bahrain has shot down 45 missiles, 136 drones. And Jordan has shot down 13 ballistic missiles and multiple drones, no numbers. So these numbers do not even include what Israel has done. I mean, if you think about it, if you have a decent air defense system, these ballistic missiles are incredibly ineffective when you have a decent air defense system. And this really highlights the tragedy of what is going on in Ukraine, where because they have not been supplied with adequate resources, air defense system resources, they are suffering multiple hits for these ballistic missiles and drones that are not necessary. If they had a decent Air Force, if they'd been provided with the F-16s when they should have been provided, if they'd been provided with enough air defense batteries to protect their major cities, the Russians would be having a much harder time with their attacks on Iran. The Iranians have been targeting airports in Kuwait, in Dubai, and in Saudi Arabia. The Saudis in particular are pretty furious about this. Now, it turns out, just an interesting background, it turns out that MBS, the leader of the Saudi Arabia, while publicly stating that he was against the strikes, it turns out that over the last month, he has been constantly urging Trump to attack Iran. So privately, it has been MBS, as much as Netanyahu, urging Trump to take out the Iranians. Iran is a threat to Saudi Arabia. We'll get to more of that in a minute. And MBS has been very supportive of this attack in private, not in public. All right, let's see. Okay, Dubai stock market. We'll get to stock markets in a minute, but Dubai stock market is going to be closed over the next 2 days, Monday and Tuesday. Not too surprised about that. The airport in Iraq, an ally of Iran, has been struck by a drone. So, one of the things the foreign minister of Iran said a few hours, I think an hour ago, was that to some extent, the Iranian central government has lost control over the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, and many of the units of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard are, not in contact and are basically acting independently. And some of these drone launches, at least the Iranian government is claiming, we didn't do it. We don't know. Now, whether you believe that or not, it's interesting that they're trying to distance themselves from it. As I told you, Trump earlier said that the U.S. has sunk 9 Iranian warships, including some significantly sized warships, and so on. All right. So that is, I think, an update of kind of the military side of what has happened. I want to add one more thing that is, partially military, but I think more strategic, and then I want to talk about the politics and what I think the real risks are in this war, and what could prevent total victory or true regime change in Iran. I think we're done with that. I'm just looking through my stuff. Yeah, we're done with that, and this is going fine. This is good. Okay, so the only real damage Iran can do, to the world, really, to anybody in the Middle East, not really to Israel, because they can't really do any damage to Israel beyond the damage they're doing. They can't really damage America, the United States, directly. So the only damage they can really do, and this is, in a sense, they would do damage to themselves as much as they do to anybody else, is to basically shut down oil export out of the Gulf. They can close the Hormuz Straits. And indeed, they have. As of this morning, the Hormuz Straits basically are closed. They attacked 3 ships trying to cross the Hormuz Straits. Most ships in the Persian Gulf have now sunk anchor and are waiting in place to see what happens. Which means that Iraqi, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE oil cannot get out. And it's not just oil, it's natural gas, it's LNG. This is the main supply of oil and natural gas to places like China, but Asia more generally, including Japan. Some of the LNG goes to Europe. So this is a major blow to global oil and natural gas markets. Now, there are some alternative routes that are going to be challenged in the next few days. There is a pipeline that goes from the Saudi oil fields to the Red Sea, so west to the other side. It's a long pipeline, but it is robust and it is being expanded. So the Saudis can pump a lot of oil to the west out of Iran's reach and load it up onto tankers in the Red Sea. The UAE has a similar pipeline that goes down south to the Gulf of Oman, again, somewhat out of reach of the Iranians, and certainly not affected by closing of the straits. The Kuwaitis theoretically could restart a pipeline that they have that goes to Turkey. This would be difficult, and they're not really prepared. The Iraqis are kind of stuck. And maybe Iraq also has the potential maybe for a pipeline with Turkey. Maybe there's some pipelines there, but many of the oil fields are in the south, and those would rely completely on ships loading up in the Gulf and taking it out. Qatar natural gas is mostly done by LNG. So oil is going to be disrupted. Natural gas is going to be disrupted. Tomorrow morning, you will see the stock markets and oil markets and generally financial markets opening, and oil is likely to have spiked dramatically up. And this will raise costs for people in the United States. This is going to obviously disrupt many industries. Now, what will actually happen is over the next days and weeks, American oil fields will increase the amount of oil that they pump out. That is, they will take advantage of the high oil prices. This is the beauty of markets, right? When supply is constrained in one place and prices go up, there's a massive incentive for everybody else to pump out more oil. And that is probably what will happen in the United States. The United States has some flexibility in increasing oil. So ultimately, long-term, I think oil prices will go down a lot if Iran is liberated. But even in the short run, if you measure short run in weeks, you will probably see oil prices come down off of the peaks that they achieve tomorrow, because the rest of the world will pump up more oil in order to compensate for the lack of oil coming out of the Middle East. But it's a lot of oil. Let's not mistake. This means that oil prices are going to shoot up, and if the Gulf is blocked, if the Straits of Hormuz are really closed, you could see a barrel of oil go above 100, which it hasn't been for a very long time. U.S. has, of course, strategic oil reserves. It could open those up, but really, what the United States mainly is going to see is people pumping more oil out of wells that exist, and wells that might be marginal to run them at $60 a barrel are very profitable suddenly at $100 a barrel, and people will pump out more oil. So, of course, this is the one danger I've been pointing out for a while now, that the Iranians one piece of leverage. Now, if the United States can destroy the Iranian Navy, if the United States can, in a sense, blanket bomb everything on the coast that can reach the ships crossing the Straits of Hormuz, maybe it can guarantee the ships can move out and can actually relieve the bottleneck. We will see if the United States has a plan, if the military is, I assume they've planned for the blocking of the Hormuz Straits. I've assumed this was in the playbook. I think the U.S. military is incredibly competent. I don't think Trump is, but I think that and the U.S. military is incredibly strategic and thinking about these things. Again, I don't think Trump is strategic or thinking about these things. So I do think that the U.S. will try to open up that block, and I assume they have a plan to do it. But it's hard, right? Because the straits are narrow. You could have very small mobile units that are shooting missiles, short-range missiles that are very difficult to intercept from trucks, maybe even shoulders. I don't know, but certainly trucks. And it's going to be very hard to stop all of that. But hopefully they can do enough to get the ships to raise anchor and start moving again. But here's the other thing the Iranians can do, and I'm somewhat surprised they haven't done it, given that they've attacked Riyadh and they've attacked Doha and they've attacked, Dubai. They could start launching suicide drones and ballistic missiles at the oil fields, at the refiners. Now, I think they might be afraid of what the Saudis would actually do if they did that. But they could. The Iranians could launch drones and launch ballistic missiles into the refiners, into the oil fields. Now, also, it's worth noting, right, that the oil fields in Saudi Arabia and most of these refineries are actually in the areas of Saudi Arabia that have majority Shiite populations. That is, populations that might be sympathetic to the Iranians and do not like the Sunni rulers who've treated them as second-class citizens in Saudi Arabia. So you might see some sabotage. You might see some other ways in which the Iranians try to harm the oil facilities of the Saudis, the Qataris, but maybe the Saudis and the United Arab Emirates. We will see if that happens. Again, this will really spur the Saudis to get involved. This will really cause them to lash out at the Iranians, and maybe the Iranians don't want that to happen. If there's sabotage, it'll cause the Saudi authorities to clamp down really, really tight on the Shiites in Saudi Arabia. So we will see. But the biggest risk we face of this war, there's no risk of Iran doing damage to the United States. There's no risk of Iran doing damage to Israel. The real risk of this war is damage to oil fields, oil assets, oil refineries, oil depots where you load them up, LNG depots, things like that. That could take a while to rebuild and get going, and that causes damage to the global economy. That can cause damage to the stock market, cause damage to American companies, cause damage to American consumers. And that, of course, brings us to the number one, I think, threat to the success of this war. And the number one threat, the success of this war, is Trump. Trump doesn't really know what he's doing, right? So he doesn't really care about bringing, let's say, changing the regime in Iran. What he wants, somebody he can kind of deal with. And you can imagine a mullah coming forward and offering him oil and offering him other things. That Khamenei wouldn't do it, but there might be somebody, quote, more moderate who would. Indeed, earlier today, Trump said that this new council that's ruling Iran contacted him and asked to reopen the negotiations. And he has agreed to talk with them. The biggest risk here is that Trump gets impatient, that Trump sees the stock market go down, oil prices go up, and panics, and does what he did with tariffs, changes his mind on a dime, and withdraws from the war. If Saudi Arabia gets its oil field attacked, they could put pressure on Trump to stop the war. Though I actually doubt that. I think MBS is really committed to this. Anyway, it's really Trump which is the wild card. When we get to the point where the Iranians are going to be engaged in replacing this regime, will Trump go for some kind of military dictator, a moderate Islamic Revolutionary Guard general? Will he has not expressed any support for the son of the Shah. Who would he support to replace the current people? I don't think freedom is anything he cares about, so I don't think that's on his agenda. So the end game here is dangerous, right? Now, this is absolutely a real risk. But let me give you a spin on this. That in spite of that, I think it is a huge risk, and it's terrible. But even if it happened, look, it's not going to happen immediately. The Israelis and the Americans are really decimating the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, the military, the leadership. They're causing unbelievable damage to the Navy, and of course, Iran doesn't have an air force, any kind of meaningful air force. To the extent that they have, I think Israel showed some photos of them destroying an F-5, and F-5 is an old Phantom. These were planes that America flew in Vietnam and were delivered to the Iranians when the Shah was still around. So these are 50-year-old planes. Israel destroyed some of them on the ground. They were about to take off. So massive damage is going to be inflicted on the Iranians. From the perspective of Israel, Israel's going to be a lot safer no matter what happens here. And one thing I think is going to be guaranteed, Trump will probably not cut a deal with anybody without having a really tough deal on the nuclear stuff. So the nuclear threat will probably be taken completely off the table, at least for a couple of decades. So I think the world is safer, even if this doesn't last as long as I would like, even if the regime change is not as thorough and as good as I would like. The world is going to be safer, at least in the short run. In the long run, yeah, but who knows what happens in the long run? It's in the kind of world that we live in. It's very hard to plan for the very long run. But there's no question that what Israel and the United States are doing, kind of on a daily basis, is devastating to the Iranians, and is making the world a safer place, making America safer, making Israel safer, at least in the short to medium term. Let's see, what did I want to say? So again, biggest threat is Trump. If Trump has the patience, now he did go on the Daily Mail, I guess, this evening, say that he thought this operation would last 4 weeks, maybe less, and that he was committed to regime change. And he said all the right things, in spite of the fact that earlier today he said something about negotiating with the current leaders of Iran. It doesn't seem like he's really taking that seriously. As part of that risk, that tomorrow, when the stock market opens, it opens sharply down, oil is sharply up, that puts pressures on Trump. The other part of this, which is upsetting and worrisome, is the fact that this war in Iran is very unpopular among Americans. Indeed, in the first major poll since the strike started, show that 27% of Americans approve. Only 27%. 43% disapprove. And I guess 30 don't have an opinion. So this is really bad. This is really bad. Even among Republicans, support is only at 55%. So if the public doesn't support this, and the stock market is going down, and oil is going through the roof, i.e. affordability becomes a problem, right? The so-called affordability crisis, non-crisis. That could put real pressure on Trump, and Trump is susceptible to exactly this kind of pressure. And I think he might fold. I don't think Israel folds. I think Israel is really committed to doing this long term, and I think it'll do this for weeks. I don't know how many missiles Israel has, how long it can sustain this level. Probably not for very long, not for more than a couple of weeks. But I think they're ready to do it, and hopefully, again, as part of the prep for this, American missile production is accelerated. If Israel produces any of these missiles, hopefully they are increasing production and that they can keep up the pace. So let's hope that this is indeed a 3 to 4 week operation, that this does enough to weaken the regime and weaken everything around the regime and its fighting forces to the point where you actually do get regime change. All right, I want to say something about we've talked about some of the geopolitical consequences of this. One's vis-a-vis Islam. We'll talk about that in a minute as well, but also vis-a-vis China. But there's also an aspect, a geopolitical important aspect here vis-a-vis Russia. As I said, Iran is a major ally of the Russians, and indeed, Russia and Iran have some kind of mutual assistance in event of a threat to sovereignty. There's a deal that was signed, and indeed, when the first bombs fell on Tehran yesterday, Iran contacted Moscow and they asked for help, asked for all kinds of help. Send in troops was the first ask. No, the Russians said. We need more equipment. No, the Russians said. We need you to, you've got troops in Syria still. We need them to help us identify Israeli planes on their way. And the Russians said, no. Basically, Russia has completely abandoned Tehran. It does not want to get involved. Now, there are a number of reasons for this. One is Russia's resources are depleted. They're using it all in Ukraine. They have nothing to spare. And this is a good example of that. Russia's global presence is zilch, gone, nada, doesn't exist. Before the war in Ukraine, they had a presence in the Middle East and Syria. They had a presence in Tehran, in Iran. They had a presence all over Africa. That has been diminished dramatically. Russia is not a global force anymore. It's managed to get hundreds of thousands of its young people killed in Ukraine, and about 1 million of them maimed, injured in Ukraine. And its tanks are gone, its missiles are gone. It just doesn't have the resources beyond what it's exerting in Ukraine to help anybody. That has geopolitical significance. It means Russia is really, really, really weak. A little bit of help for the Ukrainians could really tip this. Now, note that other countries are watching this. Other countries are watching. Other countries that have bought Russian weapon systems. They're not going to buy Russian weapon systems. Not only do the weapon systems not work very well, but then they get no support. They get no backup. And even though when Russia promises to come to people's aid, they don't in the end. I think North Korea is paying attention. I think Beijing is paying attention. Russia is not a reliable ally. It's a weakling. That's a good reveal, I'd say, for the world. All right, to illustrate this further, we get a post today in Russian, not in English, this time, from, Russia's chief philosopher, the guy called Putin's mind, Alexander Dugin. This is Alexander Dugin's post today. He says, if real patriotic reforms do not start in Russia now, the situation will become simply unpredictable. Our allies are being systematically destroyed, one by one. It is clear who is next, and it is clear what negotiations with such an enemy mean. I believe that the strategy of creating an image that everything is fine in Russia and that peaceful life is going on as usual has exhausted itself. We are next. In a global sense, everything depends on how long the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps holds out. If Iran holds, everything can go in the opposite direction. If it collapses, we are next. That's great. I mean, anytime you get Dugin shivering in his boots, worried about Russia's collapse, being afraid of the Americans and the Israelis, I guess, that is good news. That is absolutely good news. So, yes, I mean, what we're doing in Iran is having repercussions in Russia. And one can only imagine and reflect on what is going on in China and what Xi is thinking, what his generals are thinking, as they watch Israel and America, Israeli and American technology just basically eviscerate the Iranians and make them an insignificant force. And the Russians have to be thinking, can we take on the Americans? Can we challenge them? Is there anything we can do? And do we want to? Do we want to even try? And add to that the element that I talked about yesterday, which is the fact that if you get regime change in Iran, any kind of regime change that is friendly now to America, imagine a regime change in Iran that is friendly to America, whether liberal democracy or whether some kind of authoritarianism, whatever it happens to be, but it's friendly to America. And therefore, under the sway, America will be a big player in its oil market. Now that Venezuela is under American sway, as I said yesterday, where does China get its oil if there's a crisis? Who sells China oil if there's a war in Taiwan? If America tells all its allies, including its allies in the Middle East, do not sell oil to China, what happens? China had the safeguard, basically, of Iran and of Venezuela. That is gone. That is gone. So this is, again, this is an important consideration. I think this is the kind of the, if you will, unintended, I assume unintended consequences of this war. It's unintended consequences of what happens when you actually have a strong foreign policy that actually goes after the bad guys. Now, again, Trump could ruin this all easily. But so far, he says that the bombing will continue throughout the week or as long as necessary, right? And he mentioned 4 weeks to one press outlet. The Omanis still are saying a diplomatic door is open and diplomacy could succeed. But I don't think anybody at this point believes them. And in particular, I'd say, in particular now, given that the Gulf states, including Saudi Arabia, have now been antagonized against Iran, there's going to be a little pressure from that area on Trump to go back to the negotiating table. A story just broke, I guess, 20 minutes ago, that France, Germany, and the UK are considering using their air forces to strike Iranian launchers. That would be huge. Why not increase the number of planes that are flying, increase the number of bombs that can be dropped? And if you can get rid of the ballistic missile threat of the Iranians, if you can annihilate the ballistic missile program, they have 2,000 missiles. They've, I don't know how many they've launched already, but many, right? Maybe 1,000, maybe 1,400. We've heard at some point they're going to be depleted here. If we can have, the world's free countries launching air attacks on the launches. Now, Israel and the United States are going to do most of the work, but all the help, go for it. It's all good if we get that help. And remember, these are all countries that denounced the attack when it began, but now that Iran is kind of shooting at everybody, they want to participate. The Israeli military chief of staff, Yael Zamir, said that many more days of combat lie ahead. And patience and resilience are required. Again, Israel, the main challenge in Israel is the ballistic missiles and running to the air raid shelters constantly. My sister's attitude, I think, is the attitude of many people in Israel. We were WhatsApping yesterday, and she said, "This is horrible. It's disruptive. It's dangerous and it's scary, but it's necessary. This has to happen." And I think Israelis completely understand that this has to happen and are willing to take the hit to their lives. They're willing to face the risks involved. Because they know the extent to which this indeed is necessary. All right. I think that is my update. I want to mention two other news stories before I go to your questions. And I see we have a few. I'm looking for more $20 and $50 questions, $100 questions, anything like that. We're still quite short on the amount of money raised for the first hour. Remember, my time is money, you are basically paying me to do these. And if you value these updates while I'm traveling, when I'm at home, and everything, then please show your support through the super chat. By the way, tomorrow the show will be early in the day for you Americans, because I've got a talk at 7 p.m. I've got a train to catch at 4 p.m. So I might do a show when it's early morning on the East Coast. So good for you Europeans, not so good for you Americans. But that'll probably be the show. I only get back to my hotel after the talk, after midnight, and that'll be true as well. We'll see on Wednesday. That'll be true on Wednesday, and that'll be true on Thursday as well, where I'm giving talks in the evenings, and more difficult to do these shows. But I'll try to do them during the day if I can. All right, what did I want to say? Yeah, two other news events that I think are important. This one, I'll mention one that I'm not going to talk about now, but it's a big story and it's a big deal. We've talked about it a little bit a few days ago. We'll talk about it some more in the future, but this is a big deal, and that is the way the U.S. government has treated Anthropic, and the way OpenAI has basically lied and deceived its way into a government contract while trying not to offend anybody. I, for one, plan to dump OpenAI, that is, dump ChatGPT as much as I like it, and move to Claude. Generally, subscription to Claude have gone through the roof, and I intend to subscribe to Claude and drop ChatGPT, and maybe add Grok or something. But the way OpenAI has behaved vis-a-vis the Pentagon, the way they have tried to deceive their own customers and their own shareholders, is just horrific, and I don't think it's a company that I want to support with my business. So I'll talk more about that when we have time in a future show. The second story is a terrorist attack that occurred, or what looks like a terrorist attack, by all accounts is a terrorist attack, that occurred yesterday, of all places, in Austin, Texas. So I really hope that all my friends and all the people I know in Austin, Texas are safe. But yesterday, a gunman on 6th Street, on East 6th Street, in the music section of Austin, Texas, opened fire on people. 2 are dead. I think there were 5 or 6 that were injured. Just a horrible attack. Supposedly, he was wearing a T-shirt that said something like "Owned by Allah." Supposedly, he had an Iranian flag on the T-shirt underneath his shirt. He had a Quran in his car. There's good reason to believe that this was an attack. He comes from a Muslim origin, so there's reason to believe that this was a Islamic Muslim motivated terrorist attack in Austin, Texas, and stimulated by the war in Iran. So I don't think it's a sleeper cell. People are worried about Iranian sleeper cells. I don't think they really exist. But it is going to get the blood of some psychologically marginal people who, most of these people, maybe, I don't know how religiously fanatic they are, but they're psychologically unstable, and this gives them a cause for which they can commit suicide and die for. So, real tragedy in Austin, and I hope, again, everybody I know, and all of you out there who I know are listening from Austin, Texas, I hope you and your families and your friends are all safe, and that this, that this is an isolated case, and we won't see more terrorist attacks as a consequence of this war. All right, let me turn now to your questions. I do want to peek quickly at my Telegram channels. I also think, when is the market opening? Future markets open. I think they open later, so it's too early for future markets, so we're not seeing that. I do find it interesting that while gold is going up with all this turmoil, which you'd kind of expect, and I think it will go up more tomorrow, Bitcoin is not. So for all the people who thought Bitcoin was a haven, Bitcoin was an escape, Bitcoin was the way was a hedge, protect yourself against a crazy world, It is not. It is kind of stuck at around 65. It keeps trying to rally and go towards 70,000, which is already a pretty disappointing number. Bitcoin is down 23% over the last year, and only up 32% over the last 5 years. And down 14% over the last month. Bitcoin is not a safe haven. Gold is, and for geopolitical instability. Okay, let's go to your questions. There seem to be quite a few of them. Feel free to ask more. We're still way below our targets, so feel free to jump in, particularly with $20+ questions. Evan, thanks for everything you do, Yaron. Also, thanks for appearing on Meeting of the Minds this afternoon. Yeah, I was on Meeting of the Minds, Harry Binswanger's List event this afternoon talking about Iran. So yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed it. Professor Kraken asked, missing the live show yesterday, so celebrating with a donation today. I appreciate that. Professor Kraken from the Czech Republic. I appreciate it. Thank you. Will, did anyone else notice Fossil Future right behind Douglas Murray during his Free Press live stream? Too cool. No, I didn't notice that, but I'm not surprised. I mean, Douglas Murray, I'm sure, is friendly towards Alex and Alex's agenda. I know he read the book. I know he's read Ayn Rand. I know he's read my books. He's friendly towards me. So Douglas Murray, most part, is a good guy. I mean, we've got differences, significant differences about the nature of Western civilization and its origins and the future and a lot of stuff, but is open to a lot of our ideas and has engaged with them, and that is good. Colleen, nice to see you, Colleen. Are you at all concerned that this will become a prolonged conflict that threatens U.S. supplies? Do you have any sense of Iranian population desire for regime change? So, no, I'm not particularly concerned. And I'm not particularly concerned is because the Iranian regime is weak. It is very weak. The military is weak. Now, they can suppress their own people for a long time, but they can't really inflict harm on anybody else for a very long time. I think that you could see within a week the ballistic missile capabilities depleted, particularly if other countries join in bombing the missile launches, and maybe Saudi Arabia, maybe some of the other Gulf countries will join in, maybe the Europeans will join in. Remember, Israel has basically cleared the space. It's eviscerated all of the air defense systems, so anybody can fly in and do whatever they want. So any of these countries, hopefully, if they come in, help destroy the launches and help ultimately destroy the ballistic missiles, then Iran has no way to threaten anybody. Its only capacity to threaten anybody, any country, is its ballistic missile program and its drones. And I think those could be placed under control. Those could be basically destroyed. The capabilities can be destroyed over the next couple of weeks. I think so that's one. I do worry about their disrupting oil supplies. I think oil supplies, that is the weakness of this campaign. I assume the United States has a plan on how to deal with that, but I'm not sure. I also am assuming that one of the reasons that most of the air defense systems the U.S. shipped to the Middle East are deployed around the oil fields and around the Saudi oil facilities and the other countries' oil facilities in order to protect those facilities. I don't know that for a fact, but I assume that's the case, and that they have all kinds of ways in which to protect those facilities from drone attacks. So I just don't see how it goes for a long time. Now, in terms of the desire for regime change, look, for days, Iranians went out into the streets in the hundreds of thousands to demonstrate against the regime, actually in the millions if you count the entire country, in spite of the fact that they were being shot to death, in spite of the fact that 30,000 of them died, 30 to 40. They kept coming, and then recently they went out the streets again in spite of knowing how the regime would react. If you remember the girls' revolution 2 years ago, where Iranian girls went out into the street to demonstrate against the prohibition on showing hair, right? On where the requirement to wear the hijab, and how brave they were, how courageous they were, and how principled they were in what they wanted. They wanted a normal life. They wanted a Western normal life. There is a significant percentage, I don't know what the percentage is, but a significant percentage, I think over 40%, potentially well over 50% of the Iranian population that not only wants regime change, but wants a secular government. Now, it's also true that there's probably about 20% of the Iranian population, maybe more, who likes the Islamic regime, who is religiously fundamental, that wants this to continue, that is willing to die for Allah, that likes all the morality laws and the hijab and all of that. I don't think it's more than 20%. It might be 40%. I don't know. And then there's a bunch of people in the middle who don't, who not, don't have strong opinions one way or the other. So I'd say more of the Iranian population wants regime change, and indeed wants regime change towards secular regime, than want the regime to continue. Now, whether they will be strong enough, whether they will be able to take over the government and replace it, is very difficult to tell. And to a large extent, will depend on whether any military units or even Islamic Revolutionary Guard units defect from the government to the opposition and march with the people and take over the government. But that is going to happen. Regime change can only happen on the ground. So the Iranian people will have to rise up and take control of their government. I think they want to do that. I think there are enough of them. I think they will get support from some of the military. But there's no certainty to any of that. And as Israel and the United States weaken the regime more and more and more, and they're doing this explicitly, weakening those elements of the regime that would fight against the reformers, against the people who want a regime change, the probability of success increases. So I'm really heartened to see today many of the attacks, I don't know if most, many of the attacks were on regime troops that would be used to suppress any kind of uprising by the people. That's what Israel was attacking. The headquarters of those elements those militarized elements within Iran that would try to suppress the people, would try to shoot at the protesters, would try to stop the regime change. If they can keep doing that, if they can identify enough of them, and not just in Tehran, but in other cities around Iran, then I think you will start seeing people rising up against the regime and slowly replacing them. And it might happen in some of the peripheral cities first. You might see the people taking over cities in different parts of the country before Tehran falls. But ultimately, I think Tehran will fall, and I think you will see regime change. Now, whether they can coalesce around one figure, whether they can coalesce around one system of government, whether this descends into some kind of civil war or not, I don't know. I hope not. But I do think this regime is finished. I don't think it could sustain the embarrassment of how badly it is losing, how badly it lost the 12-day war, and how badly it's losing now. I mean, as I said, the Israelis hacked, Iranian television and showed Bibi Netanyahu and Trump. I guess the headline has a wrong date, huh? I don't know if anything can be done about that. All right, let's see. Thank you, Colleen. All right, Jennifer from Canada. Other day, you said FDA food inspectors has little to lose on screw-ups, but isn't hyper fear of screw-ups why FDA slows so many good drugs coming to market? Wouldn't FDA food inspectors have some fear of letting bad food through? Not really. the reality is that the inspector on the ground is not going to lose his job if the bad food goes through. He's got a job to do. He clocks in 9 to 5. If somebody wants to bribe him a little bit, he doesn't make a lot of money. It's easy to do so. I remember listening once to a NPR, of all places, National Public Radio story, interviewing California farmers. There'd been some E. coli or something food thing, and they were looking at food inspection on the farms. And the farmers were talking about FDA inspections, and they were talking about inspectors from supermarkets, grocery stores. And it was obvious, and it was clear from the way they were talking, this was NPR, they were a lot more worried, in a sense, that the rigor of the food inspections did not come from the FDA. The rigor of the inspections came from the private food inspectors, the grocery stores. They were doing a better job than the FDA. Now, I think the incentives are a little different when it comes to drugs. I think when it comes to drugs, the committees that approve the drugs, this is not their job. This is not their day job, for the most part. The incentives are different. It's a much more political thing. Their decisions affect the entire country. If a drug goes out there and there are severe side effects, they look really, really bad. The politicians who appointed them look really, really bad. And their incentive is not to have drugs released, because any drug released it has this potential of side effects. So they are super conservative, super rigorous, in ways that are, again, destructive to consumers. So they don't give consumers choices in terms of what kind of drugs they can get, because they immediately rule out anything that might have any kind of significant side effects. So I think you have to look at who is doing the inspecting. What are the incentives that they have? I think the food inspector has different incentives than the FDA as a regulatory agency has. But that's a good question. Unrelated to the one you're on, but a good question. All right. Molten Splendor, $50. Thank you, Molten Splendor. The poll showing the low percentage of American support for Iranian war reminds me of those who declared that the attack on the Twin Towers was America's fault. Yeah, but the polls never, that was never a big number, right? So here, only 23% support. I don't think, and 46 are against. I don't think 46 of Americans thought that the Twin Towers was America's fault. But I don't remember those polls. Maybe you're right. These numbers with regard to Iran are scary numbers, and have to worry Trump. Part of the reason I think he's doing this is to bolster his chances for the midterms. If it's this unpopular, then the chances of the midterms are not being bolstered. Professor Kraken says, one more to celebrate the good news yesterday. Read a lot of bad takes during the week. Yeah, Israel and America job. It's amazing what you can do if you have the right intelligence, if you have great intelligence, and if you have great technology, and if you have great motivated troops deploying all of that. Steve Rogers. Hey, Steve. Steve says, remember John Lewis's website, A Chronology of Attacks Against the West. That would be really useful right now. I can't find it online. Know of anyone who might have a copy? Can we resurrect this key bit of info? Ilan Jono might have a copy, or might have his own chronology, but it would be useful. It would be useful to put out a chronology like that, specifically identifying the Iranians when they did it. So if it doesn't exist, we can recreate it. It should be it's not that hard to figure it out, particularly if you just limited it to an Iran-based one. That would be pretty easy to do. So yeah, I think Ilan would be a good person to contact about that. Ask him if he has it. If I remember tomorrow, I'll ask him as well. And it would be a good idea to recreate it and put it up somewhere. Upton, every internet forum yesterday, Iran killed tens of thousands of protesters. Meh. A school blew up. The Jews must be stopped. It will be a long time before Israel is paid back in spirit for liberating Iran. Yes, a very long time. Nobody's sympathetic to Israel. Nobody cares about Israel. Nobody's pro-Israel. But yes, the school, as I talked about earlier, the Jews didn't actually do it. It turned out to be the Iranians did it. It was a misfiring of one of their missiles. And yeah, and it's also mere uncaring about all the Americans Iran, this regime has killed, which is the moral justification for this war. The moral justification for this war is not the liberation of the protesters or retribution for the killing of the protesters. The moral justification for this war is retribution for all the Americans killed by the Iranian regime over the last 40-something years. It's retribution for the taking of the embassy in 1979, retribution for the Marines dying in the barracks in Beirut in 1983, retribution for the Kobar Tower, and retribution for the many other American casualties over the years of this Iranian regime. It is also, I think Kobar Tower was in 96. It's also a preemptive strike against the potential of Iran getting a nuclear bomb. It's a preemptive strike against the potential of Iran building an ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile, which is what they are working on, as they were working on as we speak. Absolutely, this is a moral war from the American perspective, a war of self-defense, essentially a war of self-defense. Sadly, prosecuted by somebody who could stab his allies in the back at any moment and could change his mind about something at any moment, and is ultimately not a strategic long-term thinker. So one hopes that there's somebody in the White House that is, and that whatever the forces align, maybe it's MBS encouraging him, that somehow he allows this to continue. I mean, one of the fears should be if Xi calls him up and says, you should really stop this, and then Putin calls him up and says, you should really stop this, he might stop. I don't know. All right, let's, let me look at these stickers. Let me thank the stickers. Ryan, thank you for the sticker. And, oops, that was Ryan. And this is Jeremy. Thank you for the sticker. And who else do we have? Enric. You too can support the show and value for value, trade with me and show your appreciation and, be a trader with me. I provide the content. Trade with me. You can do that by doing a sticker. There are 300 people watching right now live. Many of you probably are not regular supporters of the Yaron Brook Show. I don't know if you've done a super chat or a sticker in the past. You might not be. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Matthias, for the stickers. Thank you, guys. So this is an opportunity for you to while you're live to support what I do and show your support for that. And again, become a trader rather than just a consumer. Just a consumer. All right, we've got over 300 people watching live. All right, Michael, are Trump and Bibi learning that being decisive is a way to maintain power? I don't know. I don't know what they're learning. I mean, as you know, I'm not a fan of either one of them. I don't know what they're learning from this. Bibi has been at his best, without any question, over the last 2 years. I think starting with the complete destruction of Hezbollah, with the beepers, and to this day, he's been at his best from a military perspective. Domestic policy, but at least from a military perspective, done a good job. Trump, on again, off again, on and again, on off again. Sometimes he does good stuff almost by accident. This is one of those times. Bonnie, thank you for the sticker. Really appreciate it. Michael, with radical Islam rapidly die with the fall of Iran, I think it will weaken significantly. I think it will weaken significantly. Will it die? It's hard to say. It still has supporters like the Qataris and others, but it is going to weaken, and even the Qataris are going to be hesitant to piss off the Israelis too much after what they saw them do to the Iranians. So I think that Hamas is finished. Hezbollah is for the most part finished. Its only supporter was Iran. So what does Hezbollah do without Iran? If Iran falls, Hezbollah is finished. I think much of the radicalization in Europe ends because much of it is funded by Iranian money. As I've said many, many times, the Sunni Islamists, including bin Laden, by the way, and certainly the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, were super inspired, really, really, really inspired by the Iranian Revolution. Even though the Iranian Revolution are Sunnis, many of the, Iranian Revolution are Shiites, many of the Sunni Islamists were inspired by its success, inspired that Islam could win, and were radicalized by the Iranian Revolution of 1979. You saw a massive expansion in the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, leading up to the murder of Sadat in 81 or 82. You saw bin Laden radicalized, ultimately moving to Afghanistan and fighting the Russians in Afghanistan during the 1980s. You saw generally the establishment of many of the Sunni terrorist organizations and being re-energized and really created. Most of these terrorist organizations are relatively new, post-1979, inspired by the model of Iran. Iran falling, and the people of Iran leading to the revolution is going to, without any question, undermine Islam everywhere. Will it die completely? Probably not, but will it be weakened dramatically? Yes. Colleen, thank you. Do you see any similarities between the U.S. response to Israel-Gaza war and support for Palestine and the U.S. disapproval of this war? U.S. response to the Israeli-Gaza war and support for Palestine and the U.S. and the disapproval of this war. I mean, yes. I don't know, right? So what I see is that since the war with Gaza, since October 7th, really, the U.S. population, both on the left and on the right, has been moving away from Israel, has been becoming more and more anti-Israel. And the number of conspiracy theories on the left and on the right suggesting that the American government is just doing whatever Israel wants it to do, is being manipulated by Israel, that perspective has grown dramatically. Remember, Tucker Carlson, a hater of Israel and a hater of Jews more broadly, is hugely popular, particularly among young Republicans. He is convinced this war is basically being driven by Netanyahu, who is manipulating Trump. And I think a lot of Republicans, as a consequence, are convinced of this. And I think, given that it's coming from the right and from the left, right, you're seeing more and more of them turning against Israel, and as a consequence, turning against this war, which they see as an Israeli war, which the U.S. is being dragged into. And remember, Trump has not made the case to the American people. Trump has not gone out there and said, this is why we're attacking Iran. This is a threat the Iranian regime poses to American citizens. This is why it's in our national self-interest to do this. This is why this is an essential self-defense war. He hasn't done that. He hasn't gone to Congress. He hasn't gone to the American people. He's just a gunslinger. And he's just slinging his gun, and he's not explaining what he's doing. So it's not surprising the American people don't support it if they're getting their news from Matt Walsh and from Tucker Carlson, instead of, being advised by the leader of the country, which is Trump, but by the person who's initiating this. I mean, that it used to be that you did something like this, you did a fireside chat, and you explained what you were doing to the American people. Trump has not done that, which is typical of Trump. But it's a reason why, and American people right now don't trust him. He's got very low popularity, and they're just extending this to this as well, in addition to the hatred of Israel that is coming again for both left and right. Stephen, can you bring Tara Smith back? I just started reading Oprah again. Any tips for getting the most out of it? Yeah, I mean, she'll come back, but it'll be a while. She's, it's 6 months to a year. She'll be back. I don't really have any tips for reading it. Read it slowly, read it thoughtfully. I'm still considering doing the Oprah reading group. It'll probably happen. I just don't know when. I'm trying to figure out when I can carve out enough time to actually do it. And also how to get money for doing it that does not cannibalize other sources of income for the show. So there will be a Oprah study group that you guys can participate in, but I don't have any tips other than read it slowly, ask questions. If you don't understand something, read it again. Really try to devote significant time to it. Don't just breeze through it quickly. Augustina, hey Augustina, nice to see you. What needs to be done by the US and Iran in the medium and long term? Do you think unprincipled Trump will do what's right? So we'll start with the second question. No, I don't think he will do what's right, but it might be out of his hands. That is, the better elements within Iran might do what is necessary in Iran, whether Trump wants to or not. I don't think he cares one way or the other about doing the right thing. What the US needs to do is to insist that any regime change is a regime change that is a move, a significant move, a dramatic move towards freedom. The Iranian people have made it clear that they want to be free, politically free, that they want, let's call it liberal democracy. We're not going to get capitalism, but let's get liberal democracy or constitutional monarchy. It doesn't matter as long as the power is not with the monarch, as long as it's just symbolic. What we want is a free government, and we want free elections and a relatively free economy. Now, what the United States should be doing is making that clear that it will not accept any regime change other than that, and that it is actively looking for opposition figures within the Iranian people who would commit to doing that, and that it would support them potentially, with intelligence, with destroying their opponents, the mullahs, and potentially even, at least in the short run, with money. So the United States should be clear about what kind of Iran it wants after the fact. It wants a free Iran that has a free oil sector that is pumping out oil, that allows American investments in it, that that would appeal to Trump, that is generally again, a liberal democracy, a Western style free country. It doesn't have to be ideal, but something. So I think that needs to be explicit, and I don't think it will be. In terms of militarily what it can do, I think it's doing. It's basically weakening all the regime elements that are going to suppress, destroying. I don't know that they're doing enough of it. I would make a list of all the mullahs and try to kill them all. I mean, if you're an ayatollah in Iran, you should be on a kill list. And whether that is in Tehran or the spiritual home of Shiite Islam in Iran is Homs. Yes, Homs, right? Am I getting this mixed up with another city? But I think that's it. Anyway, I would go after that city, its schools, its madrasas, its religious leadership. I would make this about eliminating the religious infrastructure for Islamist rule. And I don't think Trump will do that. I don't think Trump will do that. But we might get a good result in spite of that. That is, the Iranian people might do it anyway, even without American help. That is, we will take out the military side of it, and they will deal with the post-regime kind of regime. Anem, is calling the action unconstitutional a way to hedge on praising Trump? Bottom line, should we have done it or not? We should have done it. Should have asked for Congress permission first. Should have had a vote in Congress first. I have no problem praising Trump this is good that he did this. And I said Kamala wouldn't have done it. Other Republicans probably would have. But it's unconstitutional. That's just a reality, a fact. And he should have asked for congressional approval to do it. Now, I'm not super pissed off about that, primarily because this has become kind of a tradition in America of not asking for congressional approval for these things, going back to before the Vietnam War. So it doesn't surprise me he didn't, and it's not that big of a deal. But he has a tendency to ignore the Constitution, and this will reinforce that tendency, and that's not good. Rafael, side note, first time in Madrid this weekend. Very impressed with art. Yeah, there's a lot of art. Art quality of the city. Also discovered Mengs. I don't know what Mengs is, which was very good surprise. Mengs. I don't know what that is. Rafael, you're going to have to tell me what that is. Augustina, how can Iran realistically retaliate? Are American civilians in potential danger from terrorist attacks? Do you trust this administration to protect Americans? I mean, I don't think there's much Iran can do. As I said, there isn't much that Iran can retaliate. I don't believe they have a vast network of sleeper cells all over the world, all over America. I don't think they can do much, particularly not in the short run. And in the long run, they may be all gone. So I don't think American civilians are at risk in particular. Again, I think the biggest risk is to oil. It's economic risk. It's not the risk to lives and property of Americans. Iran has very limited reach. Hezbollah was a risk to Israelis, but also potentially to Americans. Hezbollah has bases in Latin America. It was established it had bases in Venezuela and maybe other places in South America. You remember, Augustina, the bombing of the Israeli embassy and the Israeli, what was it, the Jewish Community Center or something in Buenos Aires years ago. That was Hezbollah in Latin America, funded by the Iranians. That was the Iranians doing that. And Milei actually mentioned that today, praising the Americans and supporting the Americans and the Israelis and what they were doing. Iran is an enemy of Argentina. But even those kind of resources, because of what Israel has done to Hezbollah over the last 2 years, Hezbollah does not have the capabilities, I don't think, to pull off a major terrorist attack really anywhere in the world right now. Now, I hope I'm right. I might be wrong. But even if they pull off an attack somewhere, nothing's sustainable. Nothing sustainable. Jamie, how likely is Saudi Arabia and other GCC states to strike Iran soon? I don't know. They might just use their air force and everything for defensive purposes. I think there's 40% chance that they would strike directly, but I don't know. It's hard to tell. It's something to watch in the next few days. Rand All-Star, 50 Australian dollars. Thank you. Could this be like the Russian Revolution, where soldiers could refuse to kill their own people and defect to join the people? And what do you think are the chances of this? Lastly, it's interesting to compare Keir and Albanese in their response. Albanese in their response. So Keir Starmer in England was relatively supportive, and Albanese was negative. I didn't see what Albanese actually said about this, so I don't know. But yes, definitely. I think that is the hope. The hope is that some of the troops in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard will defect. They will refuse to fire, that they will shift sides. I'm hoping that the military will shift sides. That is the hope. The hope is that exactly what happened in the Russian Revolution happens. Soldiers refuse to kill their own people. Now, again, they were willing to kill a few weeks ago, but maybe now Israel and the US will convince them that this regime is basically over, that it's finished, it is dead, and they are supporting a dead horse, and they will shift as a consequence. That is the big hope. But yeah, I think there's a good possibility that happens. And by the way, the same thing happened not only during the Russian Revolution, but the same thing happened during the fall of the Soviet Union. I mean, the army refused to obey the orders and that's when it was all over. And I'm hoping that the army here, the Iranian army, at some point, maybe not tomorrow, maybe in a week, maybe in 2 weeks, maybe in 3 weeks, will refuse the orders of whoever the Ayatollah is, and pursue their own course, which is to support the people, to support the people who want to overthrow this government. Grandmaster GB, thank you for all your commentary and work. I hope your family here stays safe. Thank you. Everybody's safe so far. I talked to my dad today. They're safe. You know, it's at their age. My dad is 91 next month. Going from room to room every time there's an air raid shelter and going into is just very difficult. And my mom can't really walk, and so it's very, very difficult for them. But they are hanging in there, and I think everybody realized that while this is very difficult, it is necessary. Val says, have you ever been to the Natural History Museum in London? Yeah, it's amazing. You should if you're still there. It's stunning, a spectacle. The blue whale skeleton and the architecture, when you enter, it's a vista. Yes, it's one of the great museums in the world. I've been there. I usually go to the art museums when I'm in London. I spend a little bit of time in the National Gallery, and tomorrow, if I have time, there is an exhibit at the National Gallery. I don't know if the National Gallery is open tomorrow. But there is, for those of you living in London, there is an exhibit of the right of Derby that I'm really, really curious about, that I want to go tomorrow, and I want to see if it's open tomorrow. I will go. Yes, it is open tomorrow, so I will go. I will go tomorrow morning to check it out. Right of Derby, one of the few artists that depicted the Industrial Revolution and the Scientific Revolution in positive terms. All right, we're only $29 away from our $500 goal for the second hour. I don't think we're going to go into the third hour, so that's a good goal to achieve. So $29, somebody. That's all. 2, 3 $10 questions or stickers. Nathan, are you concerned that the Iranian culture has been so degraded, living under theocracy, that westernizing Iran won't work and they'll reject freedom? I mean, again, suddenly there is a large percentage of the population that is Western. You saw that with the Girls' Revolution. You see that with the protests a few weeks ago. They want westernization. Look, even with everything, Iran is not being so isolated. Iranians travel. Iranians used to have internet. They know what's going on in the world. They can see the world. You know, nobody in the world except for North Korea is really completely isolated anymore. Globalization, which is a good thing, which is really the exploitation of Western values through communication, internet, TV, movies, is impacting them. And there's no question in my mind, I hope I'm not wrong, but I don't think I am. There's no question in my mind that if the Iranians are given a chance, they will build a westernized country. Now, again, there's a significant portion of the population that is very religious, but that's okay. There's a significant portion of the American population that's very religious. You know, if you build a liberal, a free country, then some people will be religious, and there'll be a religious party in the parliament, and there'll be debates and arguments. But I do think there's a good chance for a thriving secular country, a secular government in Iran. Richard, thanks for the reports. I appreciate it, Richard. Thank you for the support. We have met the $500 goal, so thank you, guys. Professor Kraken, Dugin is about so much of Putin's philosopher as Caroline Levitt is Trump's. He's just a regime's marketing guy. I think he's more than a regime's marketing guy. You know, I don't know how much of a philosopher of Putin's he is. He influences Putin, there's no question, because when I hear Putin, I can often hear stuff that Dugin is saying, as well as other Russian nationalist philosophers. But he is an influential intellectual, not just within Russia, but among the new right. There are many on the American right, there are many on the global right, who view Dugin as an amazing thinker and influencer. And I think he is. I don't think he's just a spokesman. I think that underestimates his influence. He is a philosopher, for good or for ill. I mean, all for ill. He's really awful. And he's had huge impact. Jamie, Trump mentioned potential talks with new leader. Is that just insane? Shouldn't the regime be removed completely? And what will Iranian people reaction if there is a deal made now? I mean, it is insane. It's horrible. It's immoral. It's stupid. It's everything. And the Iranian people would be horrified if a deal was made. I don't think a deal will happen. But the very fact that Trump is willing to even consider talking to them is horrible and horrific and a little scary, and shows how unserious he is. He's an unserious person. Roman, what are Dugin's patriotic reforms? Tsar Putin? Yeah, I mean, he basically wants conscription. He wants everybody. He wants a draft to bolster the Russian army. He wants to use nukes. He believes that the Russians should use tactical nukes in Ukraine. He wants much more power centralized in the hands of Putin. He would like, I think, to see the ranks of the oligarchs shrunk and much more concentration of power at the top. And more religion. More religion. Ingo, how to make the US population support the war? Well, you have to try. I mean, yes, Trump did an 8-minute kind of talk, but it wasn't a serious talk. It wasn't taking into account the skepticism of the American people and a real argument for why this war was necessary. That he has not done. So that would be the beginning. You're not going to be able to budge unless you make an appeal to the American people why this is in their self-interest, why their lives and ultimately also their economic lives and their physical lives depend on victory in this war. Roman, have you heard of the terror attacks in Austin? I've heard of something in D.C. I don't know anything about the D.C. one, but Austin I talked about before, so not clear yet when I looked at the news what actually motivates the D.C. one. Hellwolf, how will it affect midterm elections? I don't know. It depends how well it goes. It's too early to tell. Professor Kraken says Dugin is mostly piloting Lev Gumilev Eurasian unity under one leader idea. I mean, yes, but it's not clear who originated those ideas. And it's also, that is not the essence of Dugin's philosophy, although that's what he believes. But he has a whole theory that combines postmodernism with what do you call it? Christian orthodoxy and pagan mysticism. And it's a mess. It's a complete disaster. But he has a whole philosophy which is influential all over the world, and a critique of liberalism. Now, it's true that he's not the only philosopher in Russia with crazy nationalist ideas that influence Putin, but he is certainly one of those people, and he has real influence on a global scale. Jennifer, is Newsom most likely 2028 candidate for Dems? I think right now, yes, but it's really hard to tell because California is such a mess. I think a lot of Democrats are going to say we really shouldn't nominate somebody who's run a state into the ground the way he ran California into the ground. But we'll see if they're sane enough. Republicans were not sane enough to dismiss Trump. I'm not sure Democrats are sane enough to dismiss Newsom. Stephen, on page 25, Peikoff writes, quote, facts of reality must be greeted by a silent nod of acquiescence. So he says, I thought facts should be greeted by a child's sense of pleasure in identifying reality. Well, I think it depends on the facts of reality, right? I mean, partially what he is saying here is you have to differentiate between the man-made and the metaphysical. You can't get angry at the man-made, at the metaphysical. So some things should be greeted with pleasure, but other things, let's say a hurricane has just wiped out your village. You don't greet that with a child's sense of pleasure. You greet that with a silent nod of acquiescence. So the point is that reality is what it is, and you have to accept it, good and good and ill, positive and negative. And I don't know if that's the only thing he writes about reality. I doubt it. I don't have a copy of Opal with me. I'd have to look. Jamie, How can UK, France be opposed to Iran strike? Even Mark Carney has enough sense to support. Yeah, well, it's UK and France. And they've shifted today. Yesterday they were opposed to it. Today they seem much more positive because Iran has attacked UK and French assets in the region. They're wimps. They're just wimps. And they've got a large Muslim population in both countries. Linda, thank you, Yaron. We appreciate you. Thank you, Linda. I appreciate that. Jonathan says, does this desire for peace by Americans and European people with Ayatollahs feel similar to the Chamberlain-Hitler peace agreement in 1938? Yes, and it's felt similar for the last 40 years. You know, nothing's really changed. We've been appeasing the Iranian regime since 1979 in the same way Chamberlain appeased Hitler. Sandy said, thank you for all you do. I appreciate that, Sandy. Upton, I think the last question. What does the negative reaction of the left and right say about their worldview? Is there anything that could make them happy? Taking out Khamenei is the first unambiguously absolute good geopolitical event in my lifetime, in my life. Well, the fall of the Berlin Wall, I don't know if you were alive then, I think you were, would be another one. But what would make them, what would the left and right, what is the worldview? The worldview is a deep skepticism of the West, of Western values, a deep respect for, on the right, for religion, on the left, for the other, the non-Western cultures. Both share deep distrust of anything our politicians do, which is somewhat based in reality. And they both seem to hate Israel as part of their hatred of the West, and hate Jews as part of all of that. Yes, so it's that is, I think, their worldview. It's a mystical, anti-reality, and certainly anti-Western worldview. Is there anything that can make them happy? Probably not. You know, the poll numbers will improve dramatically if there's victory and regime change. You know, winners are popular. Winners are popular. But I agree, taking out Khamenei is great. It's only the beginning. The fall of the regime would be the most important geopolitical event, potentially of my lifetime, although it competes with the fall of the Berlin Wall. Val, on Joseph Wright, yes, it's Joseph Wright of Derby. You mean the Enlightenment painter? Yes, I adored his painting simply for the cover Richard Holmes used for The Age of Wonder, a wonderful book. Ever read it? Yes, I think so. And that's a painting that's in the National Gallery, I believe. And yeah, so if you like that cover, you should check out the exhibit at the National Gallery in London, if you're ever here. But yes, he painted the Enlightenment. He painted the scientific revolution. He painted the Industrial Revolution in positive ways. In positive ways. Somebody says, Khamenei attack was a cowardly act right in negotiations. You can't believe a word these criminals. That's the funniest thing I've ever read. I mean, the cowardly act was negotiating with Khamenei. Khamenei has never seen an agreement that he would abide by. He's always lied. He's always deceived. Khamenei has dedicated the destruction of the West, why the West would deal with him, why chanting death to America every Friday leads you to want to negotiate with the people who want you dead. The betrayal, the cowardice, is negotiating with a bastard like that. He should have been killed decades ago. His predecessor, Khomeini, is the one who should have been killed in 1979, 1980, certainly 1983, after the killing of the Marines. So no, it's not killing Khamenei was an act of unbelievable heroism. It is the negotiating with him, which was the act of cowardice. All right, guys, thank you. Thank you for the support. Thanks to all the super chatters. I will see you, I hope, tomorrow. I'm not sure, though. It depends on whether I can squeeze something in the early afternoon. Probably be a short show. I'm going to have to catch a train tomorrow to Exeter, where I'm giving a talk, a debate, I think. I think I'm debating something. and then off to Durham the next day, and Oxford the following day, and in Geneva, not Geneva, Zurich on Thursday night in Zurich. All right. I will, he says the West are mafia, not a democracy. If the West is a mafia, what is Iran? The Iranian regime is mafia on steroids. I mean, I'm critical of the West. The West is terrible. But Iran is 1,000 times worse. However bad you think the West is, Iran is 1,000 times worse. Anyway, I shouldn't fight with the people left over. Bye, everybody. Have a great Sunday and a great beginning of a week. Bye, everybody.